I never imagined grief could carry a warning. Standing beside my husband Robert's casket, the room felt impossibly quiet, yet a single whisper cut through it like a knife. My 11-year-old grandson, Lucas, pressed a folded note into my trembling hands. His eyes didn't meet mine. "Grandma," he said softly, almost afraid to speak louder. "Grandpa told me to give this to you, if you didn't wake up." My hands shook as I unfolded the paper. The first line made my heart stop. "Don't trust Dad." At that moment, a chill ran down my spine. Something Robert had discovered, something dangerous, had been hidden from me all these years. And now it was up to me to uncover the truth before it was too late. Before I tell you what happened that night, I have to ask, if you love emotional stories about family secrets and life-changing moments, hit the like button, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs a reminder that secrets can be deadly, and that love sometimes comes with warnings. Also, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from right now? And what time is it there? The first moments after the funeral felt unreal, like I was watching someone else's life unfold. Robert's casket, polished mahogany, gleamed under the soft lights of the chapel. Friends, family, neighbors, and business associates moved quietly around me, offering condolences that blurred together in the haze of grief. Yet amid the murmurs and muted sobs, one thing stood out: the small folded note in my purse, its weight far heavier than paper had any right to be. Lucas had slipped it into my hand so gently that I almost didn't notice, but the words inside were impossible to ignore. "Don't trust Dad." Daniel, my son, glanced at me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, as if rehearsed. My daughter Laura hovered nearby, clutching her small notebook, perfectly organized, perfectly composed. They didn't know. None of them knew that this note contained the first thread of a truth Robert had guarded for decades, a truth that now rested entirely in my hands. I followed Daniel to the front pew, my fingers tracing the edges of the folded paper beneath the lining of my purse. Every step felt heavier than the last, the air thick with the scent of lilies and polished wood, and the faint hum of whispers that never seemed to reach the casket. I caught glimpses of Margaret and Ethan, their eyes flicking between Daniel and Laura, a silent conversation passing that made my stomach tighten. There was a rhythm to it, a pattern hidden beneath polite gestures, and my instincts screamed that what Robert had feared might be closer than I ever imagined. Sitting there, I replayed the note over and over in my head. "Don't trust Dad." The words were simple, almost childlike in their phrasing, yet they carried an authority that felt alive, as though Robert himself was speaking directly to me through the paper. 3 days ago, he had been sitting at the kitchen table, teasing me about trivial things, arguing lightly about baseball, sipping coffee in the morning sun, completely alive. And now, he was gone. His warning, though, was still alive, and it demanded I listen. The funeral service continued, voices droning, stories of Robert's generosity and achievements spilling into the air, but I heard only the echo of those words on the note. I noticed the smallest details: Daniel's eyes darting whenever I reached for my purse, Margaret's subtle leaning forward as though trying to overhear a private thought, Ethan's crossed arms and tight jaw. Each glance, each tiny movement, threaded into a pattern I couldn't yet name. My senses were sharpened, almost painfully so, every gesture a possible clue. When the time came to approach the casket, Daniel offered his arm, guiding me forward with careful gentleness. I allowed it, though grief had hollowed out much of my strength. I reached out to touch the polished wood, the finality of it pressing down on me like a weight I couldn't lift. 42 years. 42 years of mornings, arguments, celebrations, dreams, and love, now condensed into the cold inevitability of the burial. Yet even here, even in this moment, the note burned inside me. Don't trust Dad. Call Mr. Bennett. Arthur Bennett. Robert's old lawyer, a man I hadn't spoken to in years. But if Robert had trusted him enough to include him in this secret, then perhaps he held the key to understanding what had been hidden from me. The thought of reaching out, of taking action before anyone could interfere, gave me a strange spark of clarity amid the grief. I wasn't just a widow anymore. I was a detective, a guardian of truths Robert had left behind. And just like that, the funeral became more than a goodbye. It became the first step in uncovering a secret powerful enough to shake everything I thought I knew about my family, about my life, about the man I had loved for decades. The drive home from the cemetery was quiet, but every second felt loaded with meaning. Daniel offered a careful, controlled silence, his hands gripping the wheel as if steering through more than traffic. Laura sat beside me, her notebook clutched tightly, flipping through schedules and reminders in a rhythm meant to soothe, but the faint furrow in her brow betrayed concern. My purse felt heavier than ever, the note pressed into my mind like a living thing. Don't trust Dad. Call Mr. Bennett. Once inside the house, I kept my movements deliberate, careful to appear calm, almost fragile. Daniel and Laura busied themselves in the kitchen, arranging leftovers from the funeral reception, but their gestures were not entirely innocent. Every glance in my direction, every soft word exchanged, carried a subtext that made my chest tighten. I reminded myself to breathe. Lucas, meanwhile, lingered in the corner, small and still, observing like a shadow in human form. The boy carried a weight far beyond his 11 years, and I suspected Robert had trusted him with more than just a folded note. As I sat down at the dining table, I finally unfolded the paper again. The handwriting was unmistakable, Robert's careful loops and lines, precise, measured, deliberate. And beneath "Don't trust Dad" was more, "Check the safe." Hidden documents. My instructions. Arthur only. Do not let Daniel see. My heart raced. The safe. Hidden documents. Something Robert had been protecting for years, something he hadn't trusted anyone else with. And now it was up to me to follow his instructions. Mom, Daniel's voice broke through my thoughts. He was standing in the doorway, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Are you feeling okay? You look tense. I nodded, keeping my voice soft. I'm fine. But his eyes lingered on me, sharp, almost probing. That glance alone confirmed what the note had warned. Daniel wasn't simply grieving. He was watching, calculating, evaluating. Every subtle gesture I made was under scrutiny, and suddenly, the weight of Robert's last warning pressed down with unbearable clarity. I had to act fast. I needed to call Arthur Bennett, and I needed to do it without alerting Daniel or Laura. Using Mrs. Carter's phone earlier had given me a spark of hope. I could reach someone outside the family circle, someone Robert had trusted. But as I moved toward the living room, Lucas appeared, small hand on my arm. Grandma, are you going to be okay? His voice barely a whisper, and yet the weight of it resonated louder than anything else in the house. I knelt down, looking into his eyes. I will, sweetheart. But I need your help. Can you make sure Daniel doesn't see me for a few minutes? He nodded, solemn. The boy had understood far more than anyone else suspected. He moved silently, a shadow between us and the rest of the house, and I seized the moment. Dialing Arthur's number, my hands trembled slightly. The line rang once, twice, 3 times, and then a familiar, calm voice answered. Arthur Bennett speaking. Arthur, I breathed, it's Christine. I just came from the funeral. Robert, he left instructions, a note. My voice wavered, but the urgency pressed forward. There was a pause, and then his tone shifted, a mix of concern and steel. Christine, tell me everything. I whispered the details of the note, of the warning, and of Daniel's subtle, unsettling behavior. Arthur didn't interrupt, simply listening, cataloguing, understanding. Christine, he said finally, you need to get to the safe before anything is moved or discovered. There are documents Robert left behind, contracts, accounts, things you won't understand at first glance. But they could change everything if they fall into the wrong hands. My pulse quickened. Everything Robert had built, everything he had protected, could be at risk. And the thought that Daniel might already suspect something, that he was silently calculating every step, sent a chill through me. Lucas peeked around the corner, eyes wide but determined. He had delivered the note, and now he was part of this unfolding secret. Together, we would uncover it. But just as I started toward the study, a sound behind me made me freeze. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Daniel, returning unexpectedly. He paused, eyes narrowing slightly. Mom, what are you doing? My hands instinctively went to my purse, hiding the note. My heart pounded, and I realized, in that instant, the first stage of Robert's plan was already in motion, and failure wasn't an option. Daniel's voice hung in the air, low but commanding. "Mom, what are you doing?" I froze, my hand hovering over the door handle of the study. My purse pressed against my side, the note inside burning like fire. I forced a calm tone. "Just checking something from Dad," I said, keeping my words measured. But inside, my heart raced. Every second Daniel lingered increased the risk. Lucas slipped silently to my side, eyes wide but steady. He didn't speak. He simply understood. And in that moment, I realized how much Robert had trusted him, an 11-year-old, carrying a secret that could shift everything. "Why don't you give me a minute alone?" I said gently, keeping my tone light, almost casual. Daniel's sharp eyes studied me, but after a tense pause, he nodded. Something in my voice, or perhaps the boy at my side, made him step back. Inside the study, the air smelled faintly of cedar and old paper. Robert had been meticulous. Every file, every folder, every drawer seemed ordinary, but I knew better. My hands trembled slightly as I opened the desk drawer where the safe was hidden. It wasn't large, but the combination lock gleamed under the soft lamplight. The numbers clicked into place, each turn echoing like a heartbeat in the silent room. The safe door swung open. Inside were folders, envelopes, and papers arranged with surgical precision. Contracts, bank statements, company ownership records, evidence of decades of work, decisions, and secrets Robert had protected with a fierce loyalty. I took a deep breath and unfolded the first document. My eyes widened. There were discrepancies, hidden accounts, and transfers that didn't match the public records. Daniel had access to some of them. I could see the calculations in his handwriting on one sheet, but not all. Something told me he hadn't discovered the full scope yet. And then I saw it, a thick envelope labeled "Do not open without Christine." I hesitated. Inside were handwritten letters, detailed accounts of financial moves, and a confession Robert had written years ago. A warning that Daniel had been manipulating certain company accounts in subtle ways that only a parent could notice. My breath caught. Everything Robert had hinted at in the note, "Don't trust Dad," was real. A sudden knock on the door made me jump. Lucas's small hand rested on my shoulder. "Mom, hurry," he whispered. I folded the letters and slipped them into my purse. We couldn't afford to be discovered now. Daniel's shadow loomed near the study again, but this time he only glanced in, suspicious yet unaware of what we had just uncovered. I took a deep breath and leaned toward Lucas. "We need to follow every instruction Robert left. Carefully. No one else must see this. Do you understand?" He nodded, eyes serious beyond his years. I felt a surge of both pride and fear. Robert had prepared him well, but the danger was real. Outside the study, the house was quiet. Laura and Daniel were speaking softly in the kitchen, unaware of how much we now knew. I whispered to Lucas that we'd need to move quickly, and he nodded. This was more than family secrets. It was a game of trust, deception, and timing, and if we misstepped, it could cost us everything. As I looked at my grandson, I remembered Robert's words in the note. He hadn't simply left a warning, he had left a plan. A strategy to expose what had been hidden for years. And for the first time, I felt the weight of the truth pressing down. Robert had known the danger was close, that even within the family, loyalty could be masked as affection. Lucas glanced at me and asked quietly, "Grandma, what if he finds out?" My lips pressed together. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I let the silence stretch. Daniel couldn't know yet. Not until we had all the pieces. And as I glanced back at the safe, I realized this was only the beginning. Robert's note, Lucas's courage, and the hidden documents. Together, they were the spark that would ignite a series of revelations no one saw coming. And the thought of what Daniel would do if he discovered we had the evidence made my blood run cold. Before moving on to the next step, I want to ask you something. If you were in my shoes, discovering family secrets that could change everything overnight, what would you do first? Comment below. And while you're there, make sure to like, subscribe, and share so you don't miss the shocking next chapter of this story. The moment I stepped back into the main hallway, my pulse had a rhythm of its own, pounding in my ears. Lucas stayed close, silent but alert. I couldn't shake the feeling that the walls themselves were listening, that every creak and whisper in the house carried Daniel's eyes. I tried to appear calm, steady, like any grieving mother would after a funeral, but every step toward the living room reminded me how fragile this facade was. Daniel looked up from his phone, glancing at me with a faint frown. "Mom, are you sure you're feeling okay?" he asked, his tone casual but sharp, the kind that made you think he knew more than he let on. I gave a small nod, smiling just enough to seem convincing. "Just tired. Long day," I said, letting my voice carry the weight of someone mourning, not investigating. He hesitated for a second, studying me like a predator testing its prey. Then he turned back to his phone. I exhaled slowly. Lucas tugged gently at my sleeve. "Grandma. I think he suspects something," he whispered. His voice was quiet, but the urgency behind it made my stomach knot. I squeezed his hand, signaling we needed patience. Patience was everything now. Every misstep could alert Daniel to what we had discovered in the study, and once he knew, there would be no turning back. I made my way to the kitchen, scanning the counters and cabinets as if searching for the most ordinary things. Daniel and Laura had left plates and coffee cups, remnants of a meal I hadn't eaten, remnants of a life that now felt hollow. My hands brushed against a drawer, and I felt the familiar weight of the envelope Robert had entrusted to Lucas. The warning inside, "Don't trust Dad," echoed in my mind. It was a lifeline, and we were dangling from it carefully, balancing between trust and survival. Daniel called out from the living room. "Mom, are you coming back here?" The casualness of his tone didn't fool me. He was watching every movement, every breath. I stopped, turned slightly, and responded, "I'm just checking on something in the kitchen." My voice was calm, measured, but inside, my thoughts raced. The documents, the hidden accounts, everything Robert had left us. All of it could change the family, the company, the very foundation we had built. I gestured for Lucas to follow quietly. We moved to the side hall leading toward the guest room. I needed to make a call. Arthur Bennett. Robert had made it clear. He was the only one who could guide us, the only one who knew how dangerous the situation had become. My fingers trembled as I dialed his number. The line rang once, twice, 3 times. Then his calm, familiar voice answered. "Christine." Arthur's voice carried a warmth, but beneath it, I could sense urgency. "I just came from the funeral," I whispered, my voice low, careful. "Robert. He left instructions. There's something you need to see." He didn't hesitate. "Where are you? Are you alone?" His questions were precise, practiced, the kind of man who knew danger when it approached. "Yes, mostly. Lucas is here with me. But Daniel," I hesitated. "He's in the house, unaware of what we've found. I think." Arthur's tone sharpened. "Stay calm. Do not let anyone near those documents. I'll guide you through this. Everything Robert prepared, it's a blueprint, a protection plan. Follow it exactly. Understand?" I nodded, though he couldn't see me. Lucas's small hand found mine again. I felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on both of us. Robert had trusted an 11-year-old with a secret that could topple a man. And now, it was our turn to act with the same precision and courage. Just then, Daniel appeared in the hallway. His expression was calm, but his eyes flicked toward my hands. Something was off. He took a slow step closer. "Mom, are you hiding something?" The question was casual, but it carried a knife-edge suspicion. My throat tightened. I had to think fast. I just need a moment alone," I said evenly, glancing at Lucas to remind him to stay quiet. Daniel's brow furrowed, but after a tense pause, he moved back toward the living room. I exhaled, relief mingling with fear. We had seconds, maybe minutes, before he might realize the truth. As I ended the call with Arthur, my mind raced through every detail Robert had left. Every account, every instruction, every subtle clue. The path ahead was perilous, but I knew one thing with certainty. By sunrise tomorrow, everything would change. And nothing, not Daniel, not Laura, not even the memory of Robert, would ever be the same. The house felt different at night, heavier, darker, as if it had been holding its breath, waiting for the moment we were about to unleash. Lucas and I moved quietly down the hallway toward Robert's study. Every creak of the floorboards echoed like a warning. My hands clutched the envelope tightly. It was more than paper. It was the key to everything Robert had fought for, everything he had protected us from. I could feel his presence in the room, guiding me, whispering silently through the pages of that note. Daniel was asleep upstairs, or at least I hoped he was. Every instinct screamed danger, every nerve taut with anticipation. I opened the study door, the familiar scent of old books and polished wood hitting me like a memory. The desk where Robert had spent countless hours now held the evidence of his life's work: financial records, legal documents, correspondence with Arthur Bennett. Everything pointed to one truth: Daniel had been slowly siphoning the company, moving money, controlling contracts, rewriting histories. And Robert had known. Lucas stood beside me, eyes wide but determined. "Grandma, what do we do now?" he whispered. His voice trembled, but there was courage there, the kind only a child who had seen too much too soon can carry. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. We follow Robert's plan. Step by step. Nothing reckless. But we act fast. I pulled out my phone again and called Arthur Bennett. His voice was calm, measured, like a captain guiding a ship through a storm. "Are you ready?" he asked. "Yes," I said, though my heart raced. "We need to expose everything. Daniel, the accounts, the manipulation. Robert trusted me to do this, and I won't fail him." The next hours were a blur. Documents copied, messages sent, proof compiled. Every step brought clarity, but also danger. Lucas kept watch at the door, alert to every sound. The tension was suffocating. And then I heard it, the faintest shuffle upstairs. Daniel wasn't asleep. He was coming down, and he knew something was wrong. I froze. Lucas gripped my hand tightly. Daniel appeared in the doorway, eyes narrowing, suspicion and anger colliding. "Mom, what are you doing?" His voice was low, controlled, but his presence was menacing. I held up the envelope, the evidence, calmly. "I'm finishing what your father started," I said, my voice steady despite the fear twisting my stomach. I trusted him. I trusted Robert. And now I'm going to make sure everything he warned me about comes to light. Daniel's jaw tightened. "You can't do this," he said, stepping closer, his posture threatening. "You'll ruin everything." I took a step forward, holding the documents like a shield. "No, Daniel. You tried to take everything, my husband's legacy, our family's future. But the truth always comes out. And Robert made sure I would see it." For a long moment, he just stared. The silence was deafening. Then, without warning, he lunged, not violently, but with the desperation of a man cornered. I stood my ground. Lucas stepped back, wide-eyed, gripping my coat. But I wasn't afraid. Robert had prepared this, and Arthur was already activating legal steps, freezing accounts, securing evidence. Daniel's power had an expiration date, and it had just arrived. Minutes felt like hours. Then, finally, Daniel slumped back, defeated, understanding that the fight was over. My heart pounded, adrenaline surging, but the fear had shifted to triumph. We had done it. Robert's warning had saved us. His foresight, his trust in Lucas, his love for me, it had all led to this moment. I looked down at Lucas, tears brimming. "You were brave, my boy," I whispered. He nodded, a mixture of relief and pride shining in his eyes. We had survived the storm together, and now we could breathe. The sun was rising outside, spilling light across the city. By sunrise, everything had changed. Daniel's betrayal exposed, the company safe, and our family finally free from the shadow of deception. As we stepped outside, I felt Robert's presence in the morning air. His legacy wasn't just the business he built. It was the courage he instilled in those he loved. And in that moment, I understood that life, grief, and family secrets could be dangerous. But truth, love, and loyalty were unstoppable. CTA. If you've been gripped by this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so you won't miss the next emotional, shocking tale. And tell me in the comments, If someone in your family left you a secret like this, could you have followed through like we did?